I was thinking, oh, maybe we could talk about that on the podcast. It'd be great.
Ooh.
So,
Hi everyone. Welcome to the Semi-Bookish podcast.
Hi. All right, you can't see me waving. Sorry.
Yeah. So for those who aren't able to tell, Tony is waving at everyone frantically, saying hello.
Waving through a window. Oh, wait. Sorry. Yeah. And everyone just cried.
I really don't think it'll happen, but, just in case so people know for random purposes. If they hear the door opening at any time during this podcast, it's we're doing some moving around at the moment, and all the kids' DVDs are in this room, so I wouldn't be surprised if somebody walks in to look at the DVDs.
First thing I'm grabbing, I'm not looking, I'm grabbing Disney's The Descendants. I'm disappointed.
I was going to say, did you have to say Disney even? Like, how many?
Alright, so let's start today's episode by doing the fun thing that we always do every single episode, which is
We're reading.
Yeah, dance.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
Okay, that just means that you get to say what you're reading
yeah,
first.
I'm like, you get to go first now.
No, I got it.
Thanks for volunteering yourself, Lord Ish.
Yeah. Reading-wise, I just started the audiobook for My Year of Rest and Relaxation by I don't know.
Moshfed?
Moshfed.
Yeah.
It's our, next month, it is our staff, it is the...
Staff choices book club.
So, the Adrian District Library's book club, which every single book is picked by a member of the staff. I'm just going to call it the Adrian District Library Book Club because, in my brain, that's what it is. I don't like calling it the Staff Picks Book Club because it makes it sound like it's only for us. It's not. It's for everyone. And so,
Please show up.
The book that Grant is mentioning is the next month's book club pick, which is...
So for March, right?
Grant's pick.
Yeah, for March.
It is. I figured I should,
Start reading your own book club.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this one that you've read before?
I have not read it.
Oh, okay, so you're... okay.
I've heard some stuff about it, and it seems like something I will like, though.
Yes, Batman, who goes by another name while they're here at working. We know who we're talking about, right?
Yes.
So Batman has read that book and really enjoyed it.
I actually don't know who Batman is.
Out there.
Braided.
Who's out there right now?
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
So
Batman, who is our coworker who does not actually physically like to be named on the podcast all that often.
So that's
but
why
we
refer
love
to
them
as
anyways.
Batman. So yeah, they read it a few years ago and really enjoyed it. So and then another one of our
One of our previous coworkers.
one of our previous coworkers. I don't think either of you worked with her.
No.
But
If you're talking about the person that you guys went to visit because she went to school.
No, we're talking about the other Erin.
Oh yeah, her.
She also read that book and really enjoyed it. So I've heard good things. I just haven't ever.
Director Jen was also saying that it sounded pretty interesting.
Fun.
I just pulled it off the shelf yesterday, so we are ordering some. So if you want to come pick one up before the actual book club day, anytime, probably in the next couple weeks, you can come in and pick up your own copy of the book.
Update us on the premise because I think I know what the premise is, but you're actually reading it. So.
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of a young New York, I won't say socialite, it's not the right word, just kind of...
Just a girl.
Just a girl. Wealthy-ish. She decides
I'm just a girl.
If the title didn't give you the hint, she kind of decides... using alcohol, prescription drugs, blah, 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 blah. She wants to sleep for an entire year, and we follow her as she does that, and her occasional, she wakes up, I imagine.
Sleeping Beauty for the digital age.
Sure. Yeah, it's pre 9/11, so
that's
it's
right. Yeah,
it's either 2000 or
2000, if I remember right, because there's a movie coming out about it sometime soon.
Is there?
There's talks. I saw a Cosmo article about it because I was looking it up. There is talks of a movie possibly happening in the future. If I remember right, they were talking. This is a Cosmo article, so it might just be all speculation. But they were talking about possibly producer wise, Margot Robbie was trying to throw her hat in there
as a producer,
and then as actors wise, maybe Emma Stone or something.
Okay.
Interesting. I would actually prefer Margot Robbie in the role of the character than Emma Stone, even though I really
it was only just speculation on if Emma Stone was actually going to be in the movie.
Yeah, really like Emma
think
Stone,
they're not like fully it's not like fully announced yet.
Right, they haven't
so
announced
like
anything, yeah.
I think there's just talks of this book being adapted into a movie.
Sure.
But from what I read, it was like 2000.
It's a seminal example of the kind of contemporary realist book that we have been seeing in the last 7 years especially.
Have you read it?
I have not read it, but I've read a lot of LitHub articles about that book and the many books that it has spawned. Mm-hmm. It's an entire collection of books that I like to refer to as the Wilty White Girl collection.
The Wilty White Girl collection?
Yes, because unlike the plot for this book...
Is it because on the cover they all have some, like, Wilty White Girl on the cover? Because this book has her on the cover.
None of Sally Rooney's books necessarily have the characters on the cover.
They don't even have, like, people on the cover.
But
like,
Normal People is very much within that wilty white girl thing, even though the white girl in that book actually goes and does things. But in this book, unlike a lot of the wilty white girl books that have come from that book, it gives her reason, right? Like, I mean, that's the plot of the book. Whereas a lot of the Wilty White Girl collection is books with a similar kind of vibe where it's like, hey, the world is too much for me, so I'm just gonna not.
That sounds exactly like my whole entire being.
Or the world is too much for me, so I'm gonna dial it all the way up to 1,000 to see how much I can handle. But it's always small-boned, small-framed white women.
It's the tiny white woman
of the millennial generation who are either writing them or, the characters in them, or both. And so it's a weird subcategory of contemporary realism, or even maybe a new tradition. I don't know.
Weird. I don't like that.
But yes, this is My Year of Rest and Relaxation is a seminal example of that. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's the first necessarily, but it is certainly the first one that like hit big. A lot of people were talking about it when it came out and everything. And Ottessa Moshfegh has her own sort of name in the literary landscape, which is cool. But anyway,
yeah, she wrote like a medieval book that came out a few years ago.
Is that Lapfona?
Lapfona,
yeah.
Yeah, we have that.
Which I also want to read.
I think it was last year, actually.
We have it on the show.
Maybe it was 2 years ago. Anyway.
Time flies. Time's weird.
It does. Yeah. I have a weird thing with Ottessa Moshfegh because I think she's a really fascinating person to read in terms of her interviews. One of which was with the man who is now her husband. At least I think they're still married. But when they first met, because he was doing an interview with her, scheduled to do an interview, he shows up at her front gate. She opens the front gate.
She has a front gate.
Well, yes. It's not like a grand estate or anything. It's just a small enough house that she was able to, have on her own. But she goes to the front gate, which is like a garden gate kind of thing, opens it. He's standing there, and she said, I didn't know or care what he thought. I just thought, oh yeah, him. He thought the same thing, and after 4.5 hours of interviewing, they both were like, so this is not how my interviews normally go. So are we just doing this? And he was just like, yeah, sure. So he stayed over because she was like, yeah, let's do this. And they've never separated since. Like, they've spent every day together since, and then they got married, of course.
That's
so it was just like,
adorable.
It was, right. I'm like, how are you an author of the kinds of books that this woman writes? And then something like that happens in your real life. And plot twist, a psychic 2 years before that encounter told her that 2 years to that day it would happen.
Oh, cute.
Wow.
Yeah, and that she wouldn't believe it. So when it finally did happen, she was like, nope, I don't believe this, but oh my goodness, she was right. So like that.
It's interesting.
It is, right? And you're like, oh, well, that's where all of her plot ideas come from. If your life actually does that to you, I imagine that you've probably had some maybe other insane things happen. I don't know. So anyway, that's...
Yeah, no, and obviously you're more familiar with that like that, the scene in general.
The scene,
so you
yeah.
have more you have more context than I do.
Sort of. I mean,
I'll be interested
to read it or see
it.
it. Yeah. I'm actually interested in reading it too, or just reading anything by her, just because I think, like I said, in interviews, she's just so fascinating. Her mind, it thinks against the grain, or at least it did, and now she's sort of become a new grain of her own, So I always admire that about her too. So yeah, are you reading anything else?
Yeah, I'm still picking away at Art and Artist, and
Grant has to read the other book as palate cleanser for art and artists.
No, and I'm always reading little excerpts from stuff. So even if I don't mention something, I'm always digging around.
Yeah.
Movie wise, I'm going through all the Oscar nominated movies.
Anything stand out?
Well, I just watched Maestro and Barbie for the first time.
Yeah.
Both kind of mid.
Both kind of mid.
I wasn't...
I have heard that. Obviously, I have not heard that about Barbie because Barbie is supercharged and whatever.
Yeah, you're not going to get
Barbie has, like, cult following status at this point.
You're not going to get a non-partial... You're not going to get a partial review of it at this point.
Precisely.
So,
but with Maestro, that's all I've ever heard about Maestro, is that it's just kind of like, with the exception of everyone else who is like, what is this garbage?
No, it's a type of, like, obvious Oscar bait movie. I thought we were...
It's a biopic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Leonard Bernstein.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we were done with a long time ago, but here we are. I mean, sure. I mean, the performances are good, I guess, but
I mean, because what's his name? Who's playing?
Oh, what's his face? I can't
Bernstein.
remember.
It's not Cooper, is it?
Bradley Cooper.
It is Bradley Cooper. That's right. Yeah.
Me, the movie Me.
You don't need to
I
watch
have
it.
no idea what's going on.
It's okay. Grant knows my great complaints about biopics because I spare no one any of my ire or wrath.
It's hard to make
biopics.
one
Bio-
that's substantial.
biopics
Oh, I don't know.
are-
You know, I
Biopics
feel
are
like
basically like the
the
biography.
Christopher Nolans of the world may have. Yes, Oppenheimer. Sorry, I'm done.
Wait. Biopics are like the biographies, but like film, right?
Yeah.
Precisely. Yeah. Most people refer to them as biopics because people don't know how to read.
I used to say
That's
I know.
they just
Sorry.
sound. Granted, I don't like biographies anyways, but that just all sounds boring.
It is when you've been doing it the same way for 50 years, which is why Oppenheimer is so striking as it is. It's just a great movie. But again, on my soapbox, the reason that Oppenheimer is as long as it is and does everything that it is doing is not just because Christopher Nolan made it. That's part of it. The other part of it is because Christopher Nolan, being a smart filmmaker, is like, oh no, I've boxed myself into the biopic, and you can feel him straining against the biopic the entire 3.5 hours, 3 hours, whatever. And what's fascinating about
Also,
it
that
is
sounds too long.
part of it.
I don't like it.
Part of it is because I always keep calling him Lucas. Ludwig Göransson is dropping on you everything that he has ever thought to put an orchestra through for sound in that film. He is doing masterful orchestration. If anyone at all wins the Oscar for Best Score and it's not him, the Oscars are lying to you.
I'd have to look at the nominated.
I already have.
Okay.
I didn't really need to look, but I looked anyway. The score for that film is hands down easily the best score I've ever heard in a film that I've ever seen, particularly a big budget one.
What
like this
is on
one.
the Oscars list, anyways?
I'd have to look it up.
I'd have to look it up, too.
I'll look it up at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me know so I
Okay,
can
so
know.
yeah,
I can be
and-
like, this is mid.
yes.
This is mid.
Yes, Barbie mid, yada yada yada. We'll talk about it some other time. Aaron.
I love that he ducked that one real quick. He was like, and
I can talk about it if you want me to.
it's okay.
We're already like 10 minutes in.
Yeah, it's true.
We're 15
Yes.
minutes
15
in.
minutes in.
So, still slogging my way through Project Hail Mary because I haven't touched it since because I just didn't want to.
Sure.
So I'm just gonna listen to
You
the
got a
audio
couple days.
version.
Okay, good.
I have a week.
Oh, is it next
It's
week?
next week, so I still have a week to do that. So, if you're listening to this on Monday, you have like until Thursday to read Project Hail Mary and show up to the book club on Thursday evening.
Of the
But if
29th.
not- Yes.
Oh, that's why you get an extra week, because we get an extra day this month.
Uh-huh.
Ooh, leap day.
So, anyways, thanks Leap Year for having that in there.
That part.
So until then, I'm also still going through God Killer, but like I needed a quick break for a hot moment, and what caught my eye was I finished reading the fiction section. So if anybody who like goes like, why don't you have this book in the fiction section?
We're working on it.
You either tell me you want it or you should have read it.
We're not working on it. Sorry.
But we are kind of technically working on it.
Oh, okay. That's the official story. Sorry.
We are kind of working on it, just, Anyways.
It's taking its time. Yeah.
So, one of the sections that I read was Mercedes Lackey. And I've never read her stuff, ever.
Which one did you start with?
Black Griffin, which is the first of the series of... I forgot what it's called already.
It's not Valdemar, is it?
It is, but that is the first...
Chronological. Yes, that is the
order.
first chronological order. The first published series
Yes.
in Valdemar.
I looked up what order I should read it in.
Okay.
And so this is where it told me to start.
Sure.
So I started with the Black Griffin, which is the Mage War series, because timeline-wise, that's kind of where it starts. So, I was like, okay, why not? Let's just... Because I literally looked it up. I looked it up on Fantastic Fiction. I looked it up on Goodreads.
Yeah,
and stuff.
it's tricky. The Valdemar's tricky because it's one of those fantasy landscapes where the world of Valdemar is massive because she's literally been curating this for decades.
Yeah.
The first one would have been in the early 80s, right?
Yes, I think Black Griffin was published before Arrows of the Queen.
Let me see. Black Griffin was originally published in 1994.
1994, so it came after. Okay, so there's a series that was published before Black Griffin.
Yes.
That I think does come later in the chronology of that world. That's called the Heralds of Valdemar. I think it's a trilogy.
Yes.
Yeah. So
we do have that first book here.
Okay.
However, I realized as I was getting rid of some of her books because they just weren't circulating.
And we had a random collection of them anyway.
And they were all just hodgepodged in there. Mm-hmm. I was like, I might want to try this out because I've never tried her stuff, and I was kind of like,
what do you think so far?
I like the way that it's written, like the style. Mm-hmm. Granted, I like third person. I like not only just jumping in, but having little bits and pieces of information given to you as you go
along. Right?
I don't like info dumping immediately right away or not info dumping at all. There's a fine line that I walk with books that I like particularly, and what I like in books, and it's also in my fan fictions as well, especially if it's an alternate universe or they've changed it in some way, shape, or form. I like the fine line where you walk and you have the action happening, but you also put in little bits and pieces to help your reader not only understand what's going on, but there's just enough context that you understand, but there's not enough context where you know way too much beforehand and you can just guess everything right away.
Yeah.
I don't
It's a hard line to walk.
It's a hard line to walk because I'm really good at getting the foreshadowing before it's actually foreshadowing, because I will go, and this is for me for movies too, which is why I don't particularly watch them all that often, is because I will get the foreshadow before the actual foreshadow. And so
yeah.
I have to turn around and I have to go, don't look at it as foreshadowing. Don't try to guess what's already going to happen.
Except it totally is. Yeah.
And it is. And I also do this when I watch wrestling as well. I can immediately go, okay, so you're going to do one of 3 options here. This is your most likely option. But if it's really cool if you did this or this. And then I see them go with the main option and I'm like, I don't know why I'm surprised. It's already like this. Meanwhile, I'm also playing Fallout 4. Because I'm playing all of my Fallout games in anticipation for the TV show that is going to be coming out on Amazon Prime in April.
Oh, God. Why did you have to tell me that? Because now I'm going to have to listen to either griping, not you.
Not me.
Joseph is a Fallout player. I think his favorite game...
My favorite is New Vegas.
Is New Vegas. I can't remember. But he's going to be on my ear about, adaptations are terrible. Or he'll say, I don't like adaptations, so I don't want to watch it. Even if I see a trailer and I'm like, I want to see it. So one of 2 things are going to happen. It's fine.
Fallout, the TV show, it's not going to follow the games. It's going to be a different section.
Oh, okay. So it's going to have its own kind of...
So how the Fallout games work is they are not in any type of chronological order, and they are not in any type of lore order either.
Sure.
Every single Fallout game is a different location and a different story.
Right.
It is the same universe, kind of like Valdemar here, where it's massive and you have different stories happening on at once.
Yeah.
Fallout is the universe where you can turn around and you could have the first 2 games over on the West Coast. Granted, this is for reasons being of different publishers and developers at the time, but we're going to ignore that for 2 seconds.
If you can still make it work that way.
There's West Coast, and then when we get to 3, it's on East Coast.
Right.
But the thing is, there's also lore for the Midwest. There's also lore for different sections of the West Coast, because technically Fallout 1 and 2 are in California, but New Vegas is in the Mojave around...
Right, around
Las Vegas.
In Nevada and all
it's supposed to be Las Vegas, but Las Vegas got,
Sure.
So, we have New Vegas, which is a whole entire thing. But in the eastern section, you have the Capital Wasteland. And then in Fallout 4, it's not capital. It's close.
Sure.
We are in the Commonwealth of Boston. And so there's those things. And then there's Fallout 76, which is the reason that the theme song is Country Roads is because it's out in West Virginia area. Mm-hmm. And so there are different segments, and there are a lot of different things that can be, used as material for, like, example, like, there are certain factions that you have that are things that are in the Fallout universe that are, like, a given, like the Enclave, and which is the remnants of the United States government.
Right.
You have the Brotherhood of Steel, who are people who, like, hoard technology and things because they don't think people should be able to use them anymore because we ruined everything.
What we did with the world with them, yeah, that makes sense.
And then you have super mutants, who are mutants who were basically experimented on at one point with a virus to make them into super soldiers, and it didn't go very well. And you have all these different, like, raider gangs and these different things that are going on. There are synthetic people in the fourth game, but you see them in the third game, but they're in the fourth game as, like, a whole entire thing. And there's an underground railroad to get these people out, like, the synths out. It's, like, a whole entire thing. But you have that. And so I'm playing backwards.
Sure.
Because I haven't played 1 or 2 yet. I know how great they are, don't get me wrong, but it's because it's the older style of the it's isotopic, so it's like a third. Hi, David.
Yeah.
But it's like a thing. Yeah, go for it. Have fun. Hi, David. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I love it.
It's like that. Anyways, that's what I'm playing and reading. Tony.
Nice.
Go. Congratulations.
I finally wised up.
Oh, no.
I say this despite the fact that you only find out after you attempt to do this that because I read the fine print. The people who told me to do Game Pass don't. When you go to sign up for Game Pass, sure.
I haven't.
They give you $1 for the first 7 days, and then it's $14.99 a month.
Mine's $17.99, but I have the Pass Pro.
Right. It is a jump, right? Now, I don't mind that because it's still, 1, cheaper than Netflix.
It's, honestly, 2, I like the variety of stuff they have.
I like what they have on there. Yeah, exactly. That's what
I'm trying Life of P through that, which is like a Dark Souls Pinocchio game.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's currently like $45 on Steam on sale right now. But I don't want to spend $45 for... I don't really play Souls games all that often.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So therefore,
I'm
able to download that. I don't play Far Cry all that often either, but I'm able to download it through there and play it.
Yeah, I just wanted to, like, do that for a bit to see, like, oh, okay, is this worth it? I think it will be just based off of what I was able to find. One of which was the Master Chief Collection.
Oh, yeah, I haven't tried that yet.
Which... I'm super excited about. I love Halo 3, so Halo 3 was going to be the one that I... Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
It's fantastic.
I've never played it.
I love Halo...
I was an RPG girly first.
I love Halo 3. So I'm playing Halo 3 right now. I just started. I will say this. Anyone who is looking into Xbox Game Pass, make sure that you, unless you have the strongest internet connection possible...
Make sure you have time.
Just download it. Like, don't... Because I tried cloud gaming just to see if it would work. One, it does work. But when I played cloud gaming with Halo 3, because of how slowly... Not slowly, but, like, as you go through the level, it's loading. So you're literally watching it live load. And the problem with that is...
Bye, David.
Being my age and with my eyes...
Bye.
It's like, I'm going to take this card out with me. David, what are you reading?
We Need Friends, Seasons 8, 9, and 10 for a patron.
Okay.
Oh, that's fair.
See you later.
Cool.
Can't find them.
Good luck.
Yes.
They may be in repair.
Ooh, okay. Anyways.
So yes.
If you're doing Xbox
I would recommend that you download it rather than cloud game because I got super dizzy. Like super dizzy just cloud gaming because I think it's a first person shooter, so that may have been part of it. Is that you're not just shooting at what's right in front of you. What's right in front of you might be just beyond how much it can have downloaded. So it's like it's doing both things at once.
It's trying to lag, but also make you go.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's fine in terms of gameplay. I was able to still shoot what I wanted to shoot, bomb whatever I wanted to bomb, whatever. But my eyes could not handle that adjustment after one level, and I got really dizzy and felt really gross and sick. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and download you and play you later.
And it
so
does also,
I am playing Halo 3.
I say this from knowing this myself too. If you're gonna download it too, be prepared to wait a little bit.
Oh, that's with anything.
Well,
Yeah.
my Steam games, my Steam games cap at about maybe like almost 35 megs a second, like as download speed. Xbox Game Pass narrows that down to like 2 to 5.
Oh, I didn't even pay attention to.
So it might take a hot minute. Just FYI.
I knew it would take a while just because every Xbox game I have to download. It just takes that.
However, I'm
Takes
having
time,
a
so I
blast
just-
on mine just because I like it.
No, I really like. I mean, I'm able to play Halo 3, so I'm happy.
Granted, I
and
also
then there
got
are
the
others. There are others that I can play.
I think
too.
my Game Pass is higher too because I got the EA Play
Oh, that's probably true.
with mine too, so I don't have to pay for EA games.
And I am reading. I just started reading this morning a book called Dragons in a Bag by Zeta Elliott.
Get him out of there.
Is that the one that I just handed you today? I handed you the second
sequel
book
today, yes. you
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Okay.
So I started reading that. I think I've wanted to read it for a few years, but this is where the topic of today's podcast will come in.
Fair.
I started reading it because the basic premise of the book is this boy goes to stay with his grandmother and for a day and discovers that there are magical creatures, one of whom is dragons, one of which is dragons, whatever. And it opens up this whole they're super tiny books.
Well,
I discovered that there are 5 of them.
there's 5. We only have
We only have the first 2, and the third one is on its way.
Yay!
And if they circ well, we'll get books 4 and 5.
How recent are these books?
The first one is 2018.
Yes.
2018, 2019.
The last one is like 2021, 2019.
No, actually, the last one is like last month.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the 5th book came out last month. So
I was talking about book 2, but okay.
Oh, yeah, no, book 2 is 2018. Yeah, but no, book 5 came out last month. So it's a completed series, so that made me also really excited about it. But, so today's subtopic is Black History Month oriented, I suppose. Yeah, sure.
Is it? It's black
Yes.
authors, black books,
Yes, so
those kind of things. Black authors, black books. That sounds like a good title. Anyways.
It got me thinking
Yeah.
about my biggest problem with fantasy written by black authors for children.
Oh, because I was going to ask you what books you would recommend by black authors in fantasy, too.
So they would all be adult books,
Okay.
because I have no respect for anything that's happening in the YA category and haven't for the
Ooh,
last 10
not
years.
even like teen?
Not for the last 10 years. All the
Not even middle grade?
Middle grade is different. Middle grade, I feel like there's a lot of really interesting growth going on, which is part of why Dragons in a Bag is at
Okay.
home. And I'm reading it.
I am now invested because I want to know.
So with the teens, with YA books in general, young adult, I have no respect for anything that's been happening in that field for the last 10 years
Oof.
because a lot of it got really nasty behind the scenes.
Ooh. Tea?
I mean, it's not that much of a secret if you've been following any Twitter drama related to YA
I
in
don't
the last.
have Twitter.
I mean, you don't have to. It's been written about so much, and the part of the problem is that it when it gets written about, there's this whole inner loop. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is the only thing I would recommend by a black author in terms of fantasy for YA is Children of Blood and Bone. But that's because I read it and it's fantastic. I have not read the sequels yet, but that one is, I mean, just amazing. For adults, there's the obvious N.K. Jemisin, who is really a science fiction and fantasy writer. She does both really well because she's really good.
I'm writing these down and I tried to autocorrect NK to no.
There's, I would say, N.K. Jemisin, certainly Nisi Shawl and Nede Okorafor. Nella Hopkinson too, yeah, because Nella's also, all of them are sci-fi and fantasy writers, so you will find science fiction works by them as well as fantasy works by them,
that's good.
because they're all kind of old school in that way. They all grew up either reading science fiction and fantasy that way or interpreting it that way. Like in the case of Nydia Okorafor, she didn't grow up reading the great works of science fiction and fantasy, but once she ran into Octavia Butler as a reader, she was like, done, and just, did her thing. But where was I going with that? So those are some names that I would recommend. There's a lot.
You were talking about your reckoning with
Yes.
Black
Children.
fantasy and...
Yes. So in children's literature, something that is brand new as of like 2018.
Okay. So like recently. In the last,
that recent.
6, 7 years.
Yes. Is fantasy for Black children written by Black authors. That is new. Because, well, I don't know. I could say because. I don't know. Part of this, I think, is a subcultural thing. A lot of Black families, particularly in the South, have an issue with anything magical whatsoever. And that in and of itself creates a lot of like conversation around what should be allowed, what shouldn't be allowed, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's that component, but I don't think it's just that. I think that publishing, like the rest of society, has a problem with viewing Black children as children.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Like,
sorry, I was like, what do you mean for like 2 seconds?
And not even like just as children, but you have to understand, right? Because publishing's job is to make sure, well, ostensibly, is to make sure that there are books for people to read, right? Well, if you think about this in the context of children, because in the adult world, they would say to anyone who asked, well, Black people don't read. And if they do, they don't read as much as everyone else. So we're not going to pay attention to you.
The listeners can't see this, but I made a disgusting face at that.
Yes,
Sorry.
you did, I know.
As I should, but you get the idea.
I mean, if anything has proven them wrong, it's been Oprah's book club, but still. Because Oprah is what? Oh, wait, she's a Black woman. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, carrying on with that. That was an old argument that still gets dredged out every once in a while, but most of the time it's like you can point to 15, 17 different authors and be like, so all of these people don't read? Okay, sure. But in kid lit, you can't make the same argument, right?
Because all kids,
you can't just
they
be like,
have
well,
to.
Black kids don't read. And it's like, you are a children's publisher. That's the point of your, you know what I mean?
It's literally integral to, like, children, like, learning how to read and, like, how to, like, you have to read in school. Like, it is a requirement.
It's a part of education.
It is, like, a whole entire thing. So kids are going to read.
It becomes, like, a self-fulfilling prophecy,
so you're, like,
right?
saying,
Because
like,
if you're saying, like, if the people giving us books culturally are saying, well, culturally, this subculture in America does not read, then that means that all the way down the line at the other end, where we're talking about Pete the cat and Clifford the big red dog and all these other things, if we decide that those children will grow up into grown-ups who don't read because of quote-unquote evidence, whatever, the numbers, whatever businesses use to justify their ridiculous things, then you have a whole group of people who won't learn how to read because there's nothing in those, not nothing, but there's not as much in those books for them. Now, I was not the kind of kid who grew up thinking, oh, I wish I could read about 4 American kids who go to an old man's house and end up in the wardrobe and go to Narnia. I never cared.
Do you think that contributes to, like, these statistics of, like, the illiteracy statistics or whatever?
Certainly.
Like, because there's not enough representation?
Yes and no.
Yes,
See,
I mean, I get, like, the yes, but, like...
Yes and no. I mean, I think that, as a lifelong Black reader, no one was going to look at me if they were bold. You could
read whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I want.
If they were bold enough to do that, I would have just read in their face. Just to be like, well, 1, I like doing this, and 2, you told me I shouldn't, so I'm definitely going to do it in your face.
Reverse psychology at that point.
Yeah.
You can't read. Watch.
Watch, yeah, literally, watch me. Yes, that's how I ended up reading a book as a kid, because literally the Black woman who handed it to me at church was like, oh, I know you. This is about math. You won't read it. And then a month later, after I'd read it and handed it back to her, she goes, I knew you'd read it if I told you you couldn't. And I was just like, no, you told me I wouldn't. And she says, that's not the point. Did you like the book? I said, it was perfect. Thank you.
One of the kids in my class did that, but with Lord of the Flies, except it wasn't a...
Yeah.
You can't read this book. It was, here's a spoiler, and this kid was a notorious, like, liar, like, to your face type kid. And so I looked at him, and he was telling the truth, by the way, of the death of one of the characters. And I turned around and I was like, I don't believe you. Because we just started it. So I read the book on a weekend. Then watched the movies.
Oh,
and then both of them, because there's two versions of this movie, which, by the way, the 90s version is like, don't watch it.
That's not surprising.
It sucks. The 60s version is better and more, it adapts better, because it's more, like, to the point. This is, like, it follows the book better. The 90s one does not, really.
Well.
There's an adult on the island in the 90s one, and I'm like, huh? But,
I like that. It's not a good idea.
It's not, because it's like the whole opposite point of Lord of the whole point. Okay, well. But, like, yeah. Anyway.
I was going to ask what the book that she handed you was, just out of curiosity.
It was a book called Carry On, Mr. Bowditch.
I've heard that
Yeah, it's a
title.
nonfiction book. It's about Nathaniel Bowditch. It's like what they call narrative nonfiction, because it's telling a story as if it were a character that was invented, but it's an actual historical figure that you can research and dig through and do all this kind of stuff. So it's not historical fiction, because nothing in it that happens isn't implausible or made up. But it's one thing to read in a historical biography like, oh, Nathaniel Hawthorne is called the father of navigation because he sailed
Did
ships.
X, Y, and Z.
It's a whole different thing to characterize what it feels like to be a small child abandoned by the world and adopted by sailors. And then you realize the sailors don't know what they're doing because they don't know how to do math. And so he goes,
I'm gonna do
have
that.
you guys ever thought that there's numbers in the stars? And they're like, what are you talking about, you insane child? And then he navigates them through a storm using math, and they're like, want to stay? So of course it was a perfect book for a smart mouth 10-year-old, right? Because he's a smart mouth kid who uses his brain to navigate them through the storm. He has no idea he's inventing something until they're like, do you know what you're doing? And he's just like, I'm using math. And they're like, what is math? Oh. And so,
And it was back to this whole fantasy.
The thing about,
children.
in kids' books, I it's hard to really nail down what it is that has prevented black fantasy or black authored fantasy with black children at the center of it. It's hard to nail down why that's only just become a thing in children's fiction. I mean, there was Virginia Hamilton, who was a Newbery Award-winning author who wrote for decades, and she had a lot of elements of African folklore, because she was a folklorist, woven into her tales. She preferred to think of her stories not as fantasy so much as tall tales. But of course she would, because she was an American folklorist. That's kind of how American folklore. Yeah, American folklore and the tall tales. I mean, that's all that. I mean, that's how they operate. But in terms of the fiction, like in terms of just making things up or making magic happen on the page, it really has only been since 2018.
That is interesting. I didn't even realize that, but that...
Most people don't. And I honestly don't know that for a couple of years now, I've been thinking about doing this, but I have now literally just started doing it a couple of days ago because I was thinking about it, and then Dragons in a Bag came up, and I was like, okay, I need to just go ahead and do this now.
I handed you that copy of Dragons in a Bag, and you were like, well, here we go.
Kind of went. I have been very curious about what that new space is like. Because I know the premise of some of those things, some of the books. And one of them I'm really not looking forward to reading because I know that it's basically just her trying to do Harry Potter and it ain't gonna work.
What book is this?
The Marvelers by Danielle Clayton.
Okay.
I have never enjoyed a single piece of her writing, to be honest with you, because she's the kind of author who's a very cheap knockoff. If I turn all my characters brown because I too am brown, then maybe that people will understand that I'm writing for them. And it's like, no, because you don't even know how to write, but it's fine.
Do we have a copy of that?
We do, and I'm going to read it because, again, for me, this is a.
I'm like, should I check it out and read it first, and I can tell you as
just
the local Harry Potter fan if it is or not?
It's like for me, what it boils down to is it's an interesting question that I think scholars will end up asking. In the next 20 years, maybe. But it also is something that I feel like could go under the radar and people won't even pay attention to because people don't understand that how new it is, how transformative it could be as its own tradition of children's literature because because it's so new.
I mean, like, talking as somebody, like, granted, I do the adult books instead, but, like, I have to keep up on these things. I didn't even know it was, like, a whole entire thing. But then again, I also don't keep up with, like, a lot of that publishing news thing. I wait until it comes to me via, like...
Sure.
Like, book list and book page and, like, library journal and things like that. And, like, yeah, they're being marketed to me, like, through those reviews and things like that. But it's not, like, a thing that is actively being, like, part of... either the selection process or, like, whatever that is in the review sometimes. Like, it's just not there. Unless I, like, actively, like, I go to, like, the listing itself and I go, oh, like, and I connect the dots. Like, I'm not going to notice.
Well, and
I hope it doesn't fly under the radar because it sounds like a very interesting, like, something that you would talk about in, like, your literature classes and your publishing classes as, like...
Yeah. There's a group
your journalism classes, like, as, like... What do you think the carving out of this space has done to publishing as a whole, or?
Yeah, my interest, honestly, other than just being a writer, and
Fair.
looking into that, and also working in the children's department at the library, there's that too.
Fair.
But my personal interest in it is more academic than I think anything I've ever really, like, looked into, because most of the time when I'm looking into academic things, people have been studying this already. They've been talking about it. They've been
This is something that they're not.
But this is something there are essays that people have written about leading into 2018. And I'm sure if I went looking, there are
might be
probably
something
some
before
after after that, like between 2018 and now, about it, maybe. Most of them will probably be from authors of said fiction, and probably most of it will be them complaining about how they're not Harry Potter. Which to me is not the point. You're like, it is laughable, but it's like one of those things. It's like, this is not the point of why you do this.
That's not the point
Like,
of fantasy in general. Like,
First of all, it's not the point of fantasy.
We're all not trying to be the next Harry Potter.
But you see this happen. You see this happen in waves all the time, right? After the immense success of The Lord of the Rings in the States, 3 to 4 decades worth of authors were trying to be Tolkien. Even if they did interviews saying, well, I'm not trying to be Tolkien, it's like, you have hobbits, Terry Brooks. Nice try. So these things come in waves. I mean, you see this with Harry Potter, too. I mean, after the success of Harry Potter, there's this huge wave of fiction, of fantasy fiction for kids that you don't even have to squint to see that it's influenced by Harry Potter. I'm talking about Rick Riordan. I'm talking about Artemis Fowl. I'm talking about any of those, like, we used to call them tween books, any of those series, those long series for kids that were fantasy books, they all came out around the same time. Some of them were reprints,
Yes.
like Garth Nix's Sabriel and its sequels. He published it in 1983. It did modestly well. He moved on and did other things, and then Harry Potter came along, and they were like, hey, Garth, you want to reprint? How about a reprint, Garth? And he was like, of course I want to reprint. Are you crazy? And suddenly he's one of the names that everyone's talking
it's
about.
so, like, interesting. Like,
it isn't, yeah.
It's going to be interesting, like, especially if you do look into those, like, essays, like, how many authors would end up complaining that it's not, like, a Harry Potter, like... It shouldn't be.
Stop
chasing that, first of all, as pro tip. It's just, like, I would like some, like, I love the fantasy premise of it, but, like, stop trying to do that. Like, oh my god.
But I also think that what I'm interested in seeing, what I'm interested in finding, is what is it? Like, what is a fantasy written by a black author, written with black children at the center of it? what are you doing? Like, what's happening? Like, what are the most common sort of things? And yeah, between 2018 and 2024 is not a huge time span to do that. However, within that compressed time period, there's a huge amount for something that's new. It's huge. You have big names like Angie Thomas writing her first fantasy book that came out last year, and the paperback is coming out in April. I got like 5 emails this morning about it. It was ridiculous.
Of like publishers going like, buy the book.
Yeah, they're like, Angie Thomas's debut fantasy comes out in paperback in April. And I was like, because no one read it. That's why you're sending me 5 emails. But that's my point, is that someone who wrote like The Hate You Give, right? That everybody... and their grandmother could hear about. Concrete Rose was one of them. Yeah. And then On the Come Up. So she's got a huge career based off of that one YA book that she wrote and got published. But...
what is she doing in...
no one is talking about this fantasy book that she's written.
Right.
Or reading it. No one seems to even care. There is where I can see authors saying, hey, what are we doing that Miss Rowling isn't, that gives her so much fame and us none? It's still the wrong question to ask, but I'm just interested in seeing what are the traditions that we're setting up already that we don't realize are traditions, because this author over here is doing their own thing, and this author over here is doing their thing, and that author
really
there.
Interesting, like outside of like we had the Rowling, and then everyone tries to like also become Rowling, like Riordan and things like that. It'll be interesting to see what Black children's fantasy becomes that pinpoint in the tradition. And by that I mean like, so you have your Tolkien, and so you mentioned we had like decades worth of things like emulating the Tolkien style. You have the Harry Potter, and then you have almost maybe like a couple decades worth of people emulating that. You have the Suzanne Collins, and then after the Suzanne Collins, you have the emulation of that style, because those are what are coming out.
You have Children of Blood and Bone, and everybody trying to emulate that, which is why I don't... Anyway, I'm sorry.
And the Avatar series, which...
yeah, that's another one. Yes,
same thing, and now you have all these people trying to emulate that.
And if people start emulating Fourth Wing, I'm going to throw myself off of the back of a dragon high in the sky.
I saw a Reddit post.
Fourth Wing is trying to emulate ACOTAR, and you can't convince me otherwise.
I could see that. I don't know.
Because it's the same, like, area. But, like, it'll be interesting to see what Black children's fantasy, like middle grade or YA Black fantasy, becomes that pinpoint and expands the rest of the Black fantasy universe or publishing.
I imagine it probably need a semi-original like blueprint that can grab people.
It could you could
like the
do
Harry
that.
Potter blueprint did, right?
But here's the problem with that's one of the biggest problems with fantasy in general in terms of the blueprints.
There's no real thing as a original.
So for Harry Potter's blueprint, right? It's
Diana Wynne Jones.
Yes.
And Ursula, isn't it?
And
Ursula
I think it was
Le Guin
probably
too?
subconscious. Yeah, Ursula Le Guin sort of invented the kid goes to magic school thing.
I knew it was the two because we've discussed this in the past that those two are the blueprint for like a Harry Potter.
Well, it's hard though, because blueprints, particularly in literature, blueprints are not the same thing as antecedents.
Yes.
So, for example,
specific...
it used to be stated that the first, like the founder of science fiction as we know it, was Jules Verne. That was something that was incontrovertible for so long. And then people started studying a little bit more, and women of color started studying a little bit more, and they went, wait a minute, I'm sorry, so a science fiction novel is what again? Yeah, Frankenstein. And no one could argue with them. Everyone went, oh yeah.
I mean, that's...
Frankenstein.
It's
Why didn't we think of... Because literally, Frankenstein is a science fiction novel. Now, there are people in academia who say, it's a horror novel at best, but it's really not able to be categorized. And it's like, okay, everything is able to... as library
as
employee,
much as you want to call it...
everything is able to be categorized. So you're just trying to make Jules Verne something he is not, which is the father... Like, maybe he's the father of, but the mother is,
Shelley.
Yeah, Mary Shelley. So, I mean, it's things like that where you have I think that Diana Wynne Jones and Ursula Le Guin are certainly antecedents to Harry Potter. But I don't think that they directly influenced her. I do think that Chrestomanci by Diana Wynne Jones, indirectly, if that makes sense. But yeah.
It's in a textuality.
Yes, precisely. It is.
So
Yes.
actually,
Yes.
I had to remember what it is. I took a class on visual media, an art history class on visual media in college. And one of the things that we had to do is we had to talk about a different type of trope or something in media.
Yeah.
And I chose intertextuality.
Yeah.
I compared Hunger Games, Battle Royale, the Japanese
Yes.
thing, because Hunger Games is basically Battle Royale using that style of thing. So there's like the three types of intertextuality. So therefore, like, you have your like original blueprint or whatever that you were mentioning, like, becomes like the black fantasy pinhole and expands things.
Yeah, and see,
But
that's where
intertextuality kind of throws it in the hat at that moment, because like you have those things, but like you have Harry Potter, who used Ursula Le Guin and Diana Wynne Jones as an intertextuality kind of way, because it can either be obligatory, it could be accidental, it could be what is the last one? Sorry, optional.
No, that's true.
Like, it's those types of things.
Yeah.
So therefore, like, if you have that original blueprint, yes, it can be original, but you have to turn around and you have to look at what was the accidental things that were thrown in there, what were optional, what did you purposefully throw in there that low-key references another piece of media, and it doesn't
without even realizing that.
it, like, it could be anything. Like, optionals, like, not even necessary, and it could be like...
And right now, I think something that I am seeing is in the current tradition is intentional intertextuality.
Yes.
This is not just restricted to this one small area of entertainment.
No. It is
fiction.
everywhere.
It's everywhere you look. Everywhere you look in any piece of entertainment, particularly the bigger the publisher or the bigger the production company or they're stealing left,
media.
right, and center from each other. And they're not even trying to cover it up. They're saying, this is Harry Potter but for black girls. And you're like, sit down, clown. Like, that's how I feel about it. Because I get really irritated because I'm like, how far are we going to push this? If we're telling book banners, I'm not trying to indoctrinate your child with one thing, but saying on the other hand, I wanted to see what it would be like to write Harry Potter for queer children, because queer children are not accepted at Hogwarts. Time out. First of all, Dumbledore is gay 20 times, okay? Just gonna put that out there. Second of all, do you realize how groomy you sound when you say things like that?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to write this thing for something that a child has not yet discovered or tried to discover about themselves. So why would you write it? It's not to say that it's a bad thing to write it, but for you to state, I'm writing this for all of the kids who like I was. And it's like, I didn't read that way. And maybe that's why I feel that way about it. Is that when I was reading as a kid, I read what I wanted to read.
That's the deliberate.
That's all I wanted.
The deliberate, obligatory.
And so I feel like this weird thing that's happening, and I don't think it's going to stay for very long because you can't continue to tell good stories this way. I think that what we need, and maybe it's because I want to be this person, but that's not the point.
Tony's going to be this person.
We do need a template setter, but I think we also need a catalyst, something that's going to punch up the entire publishing industry and make them realize that, hey, you can tell a story that doesn't intentionally borrow its template from everything you've ever absorbed.
Do you think the pinhole, and I keep calling it the pinhole, but do you think that little spark is gonna be the same as the catalyst? Like, is it gonna be the same media, or do you think it's gonna be two separate ones?
I think in order for it to impact all of entertainment, it's going to have to be many, many different sparks in many different locations.
Specifically in, like, the black children's fantasy that we were going earlier, do you think it's going to have to be the same thing, or do you think they have to be two separate ones?
I think in that case, it will more than likely end up being the same thing. It might be a couple of things, because that's traditionally how these things tend to happen. You have a greater and a lesser kind of thing. Like Harry Potter was the greater, but there were all these lessers that were swimming around at the same time, which is why if you talk to like Jane Yolen and anyone who was publishing the 80s and early 90s before Harry Potter was even spoken, they get really mad really fast because they're like, we were already doing this. And then here she comes along with her hack work garbage fantasy stuff. Like, they get really mad. They used to literally at conferences, I found this out from a Brandon Sanderson video of last year.
Of course, it was a Brandon Sanderson video.
Apparently at conference, or it was a podcast, but anyway, apparently at conferences they were referring to her as the Scottish B word. Yeah, they weren't even saying that Scottish woman. They were literally like through their teeth being like,
they were
that's
like
Scottish. And I'm like, wow. So, I feel like there will be a greater example and a lesser example, if that makes sense. And we may not know what they are. They may trade points at some point. But I think that someone's going to come along. Mm-hmm. And my hope, I might be wrong. They may not be this person. My hope is that they're an African writer. Not an African American writer. Because we have so much baggage here in the States that one of the things I have seen just in the premises, not in actually reading them, but the premises of a lot of these books, it treats Africa and its strangeness to those of us who are born and raised in this country as a magical land. As a place, that's where all the magic was. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine for Neil Gaiman to do that in American Gods. He's a white dude. Of course he can treat all other lands like a magical paradise, but we can't do that as Black. It's irresponsible to me. And there are other things.
Do you think it's going to be like a la the person who wrote, what is it called? My Sister the Serial Killer?
Possibly.
Because they are, if I remember right, they're not African-American.
No, I think she's African, yeah. And, and there are authors like Nnedi Okorafor who, she doesn't get enough credit for what she's done in children's fantasy for Black kids because she's so known in her adult work, and she's really known in Africa. She's what you would consider African-American because she was raised here with her sister and her family, but her parents were born and raised in Nigeria and migrated here, so she is technically an immigrant. But so much of what people love about her work is it's Africans loving her work. In the States, she's extremely controversial, and she's completely ignored in children's fiction because she writes all over the place. So I'm curious to see how that tradition builds over the next 10 years. I strongly aim to take part of it. But, who knows? Publishing is slow, and I'm a slow writer and a slow reader. So, you might just get a really good, cold essay out of me.
I would like to read the essay, so when you finish the essay, throw it at my brain.
Will do.
I love reading essays like that, because they're just,
Yeah.
So, next thing you should give me is, you should show me where the Marvelers is, because I now want to read it.
I have it checked out. But
Tony!
You can get a copy from Mel.
I can get a copy. Ooh, Libby!
Libby, yeah.
Libby, please?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Do we have a smack? Or
I don't have one.
No.
I am so sorry.
No, you're fine. I got one.
Okay.
I'm going to choose 2 Black superheroes and pit them against each other, and you guys have to decide who would win. Jon Stewart as Green Lantern.
Okay.
Or Black Lightning.
I don't know a whole lot about Black
Static
Lightning.
Shock. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Static Shock. That'd be a fight.
Okay. No, that's interesting. Okay,
He's the one actual Black superhero that I actually.
So we could use Static Shock. I feel like it's a little awful to put him up against an adult.
Let's say adult Static.
So let's do
Cyborg.
Cyborg. Static Shock versus Miles Morales.
Ooh.
Ooh, both. Okay. Yeah,
there we go.
That works.
Ooh.
I would probably say Static Shock would win, just because there's so many.
That's where I'm going.
Environments where electricity could come in handy.
I'm choosing Static Shock just because it's DC versus Marvel.
Okay.
Well, I'm also
fair.
Ironically enough, I'm also choosing Static Shock, but that's because I feel like against a spider type person who has that spider in him, it is the speed of electricity versus how fast Miles can get the spider web to Static Shock. Which, at that point, if we can understand how electricity works and functions, and if Static Shock knows how electricity works and functions, he could possibly just shove it through the wall wherever Miles is hiding, and boom.
The problem is that because Miles has the powers that he has, if he's aware of the fact that he's fighting Static Shock and figures out any way of getting close to Static Shock, it's over. It's a wrap. Because all he has to do is,
He does have super strength.
He's super strength. Right? He has super speed. Not super speed, but he's fast. Faster than normal humans. He's not Superman, but he's fast. He also has the ability to sneak. That's the one. Yeah, his ability to sneak, climb, all this kinds of stuff that Static Shock really can't do once he's in the middle of a battle. Like, he can fight you, fairly well. And Black Lightning was his mentor in at least Young Justice. I don't know if the TV series. I don't know if that relationship ever happens in the comics, but it was in Young Justice. So I mean, I will root for Static Shock all day long. I do think that it would be interesting to see the battle, and I don't know who would win.
Granted, I also have a bias against Static Shock because I religiously watched his show when I was a child.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was like the best.
I should watch it. I haven't watched it.
Alright, so now I have the Marvelers, and I will let you know if it's a Harry Potter dupe or not.
Nice. Okay, there we go. Oh, I already know.